It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lawrence Jones. As said, I'm the Senior Vice President of the Edison Electric Institute. The Edison Electric Institute is an organization based in the United States. We represent all the investor-owned utilities in the United States. We also have about 70 international members. These are electric utilities all over the world that operate in about 90 countries, and one of those countries that they operate in is in Liberia. The Liberia Electricity Cooperation is a member of the Edison Electric Institute. As an institute, our mission is to work around the world to bring and help foster the provision of electricity to people around the world. If you combine our U.S. members and our international members, which includes the Liberia Electricity Cooperation, our members provide electricity to about 4 billion people. And so our focus as an organization is to make sure that utilities around the world are operating in an environment that provides the right regulatory as well as policy and investment environment to build the electricity sectors around the world. Our partnership with the Liberia Electricity Cooperation began about 2 years ago, and the focus of that partnership is to work with the LEC as well as other stakeholders in Liberia to foster the closing of any gaps we see between how you operate the utility, how you make sure you have the right access to the resources in terms of generation, the infrastructure, transmission, as well as distribution. So I think this is important. This is an important time for Liberia in terms of the electricity system. And Mr. Minister, if you will permit me, I will just add a little personal note. As some of you may know, I was born in Liberia. I went to Rick's Institute as well as the B.W. Harris School, studied at the University of Liberia and at the Cotton University College before I spent about 25 years working in the electricity sector worldwide. So for me, as a native of Liberia, electricity has been something I've been around for most of my life, because my father used to work at the Liberia Electricity Cooperation in the 70s and 80s. By the time it was actually called the Public Utility Authority, as you well know, Mr. Minister. So electricity is very important, and I think the goal here for us is to really bring and share the best practices from around the world with our colleagues at the LEC. We've been here now for about a week and almost 2 weeks actually. We've had meetings not just with the LEC, but we've had meetings with other stakeholders, including representatives from the Liberian Electricity Regulatory Commission, folks from the Ministry of Lands, Mines, and Energy. We've met with schools. We actually had a session with students from the 7 schools in Monrovia, including outside of Monrovia as well, BWI, Don Bosco, and some of the other technical vocational schools in the country. And what was important, and we've said this previously, is that that particular session with the students was perhaps one of the most inspiring for us, and my colleagues I will introduce them soon, and each of them will say a few words. But the meeting with the students was very important because what we believe as an industry worldwide is that human energy is the foundation for building an electricity sector. And what we learned talking to those young students, their bright minds, very curious. There was a young lady from Don Bosco that I spoke to who had so much passion for electricity. So with the human energy, the potential that is there, we believe that the foundation for building a strong electricity sector in Liberia is there. Prior to coming, one of the discussions we have looked at is to look at the progress, Mr. Minister, that Liberia has made. As you all know, the LEC today is run by almost only Liberians. Compared to 10 years ago, the LEC had been run by different foreign operators who did their best as they could. But today, based on what we have seen and based on the observation, Liberians should be proud of the progress that has been made. Today, there is something called non-technical losses, which for all intents and purposes means how do you reduce power theft in the country? And the non-technical losses of the LEC today has reduced by almost 20%, which is a big number compared to the rest of the world. And so when we look at the progress that has been made here, Mr. Minister, by the government, by the LEC, and by others, the donors and others. There's much to be proud of, but there's still much to do. Because to be very honest, as we see the country, we know that power theft is still a big issue. We know that the infrastructure still needs to be built. And so we've had discussions this week with representatives from the LEC, technical discussions, policy discussions. We've also had meetings with the board to exchange ideas. And so we hope that the dialogue and the relationship with the Liberia Electricity Cooperation through the Edison Electric Institute and of course with the government and others is to build the human capacity, to build the human energy and leverage that. And on the issue of power theft, one thing I said on the radio station, I was fortunate to visit Prime Radio yesterday and also OK Radio. And one of the key messages we tried to convey, that power theft is bad. When you steal power, you actually affect the entire country. So we as a people, as a community, as a consumer of electricity, needs to support the government, support the LEC, because every kilowatt hour that is stolen from the LEC actually affects the government's long-term vision for building the country. It also affects the LEC's ability to do its job. So we as a community, we were also fortunate to visit the LEC Anti-Theft Task Force that is run by Mrs. Mary Bro. And one of the things that I said when I was there was that every time someone steals power, that person is making it difficult for a mother to get the treatment at the JFK. It's making it difficult for a student to get education because that means there's less power to give them. So with that, I'm going to now introduce my two colleagues, and they will each come and say a few words, and we'll be happy to take questions. So first, let me introduce both of them, and they will come up. First is Mr. David Owens. He's the president and founder of a company called Division. And David was also the one who was asked by the U.S. government after the hurricane in Puerto Rico to rebuild the system in Puerto Rico. So we'll invite David, and after David, my next colleague joining us from Switzerland is Mr. Marco Montefiore. We invited Marco to be part of this delegation, not because only of the book he's written on energy citizenship, which he will talk about, but because, as we know, Mr. Minister, one of the big things we need in Liberia, in the electricity sector and many other sectors, is investment. Mr. Montefiore is an investor who works with companies around the world. And so after David gives his brief remarks and his experience in Puerto Rico, we'll invite Marco to say a few words, and then we'll be happy to take questions from the media. So David, over to you.
Lawrence mentioned right after the major hurricanes in Puerto Rico had this massive hurricane called Hurricane Maria in 2017. And following that hurricane, I was asked to come to Puerto Rico to help to restore electricity and to help the implementation of a vision that they had about making the electric system in Puerto Rico more reliable and more resilient. When I arrived in Puerto Rico, it was incredible. 95% of the roads were impassable. Over 4,000 people lost their lives. The total island was black. Wastewater treatment, non-existent. Clean drinking water, non-existent. So what I learned from that experience, 4 years of going back and forth to Puerto Rico, was the importance of building blocks if you're seeking to try to enhance your electric system. Many years ago, I was looking at Liberia, over 25 years ago, and said, you know, if we could electrify Liberia, it would uplift the spirit and would uplift the economy of Liberia. But when I went to Puerto Rico and I relate to my experiences there and try to inform you of some of the elements that are important if we're trying to improve the electricity system in Liberia, here's some of the things that I found out. First, you need a plan. You need a vision. You need to know where you want to go. Obviously, that's an important role of your legislature. Where do I want to go? How do I what's my vision about the electricity system in Puerto Rico? How can I make it so all residents of Liberia have electricity? Lawrence mentioned power theft. Let me just push that aside. You need infrastructure. There are several elements of infrastructure. One element is the power supply facilities. You have hydro facilities here, you use some oil, but you need to have power supply. You need to have plants that produce electricity. You can have the plants that produce electricity, but you also need the wires to carry that electricity. That's called an energy delivery system. So the brief time that I've been here in Liberia, I see you do not have a strong energy delivery system. You do not have adequate supplies to provide electricity, but you have a vision. But that vision is not understood by everyone. And is that vision implementable? The vision for the electricity system in Liberia has got to be implementable. It's got to be something that all of you are aware of. It's got to be something that you all feel very passionately about can be achieved. We need to be able to strengthen the grid. We need to be able to build more power facilities. We need to be able to connect communities that are not connected today. That requires investment. Now, we get money from the government, but we need to find a way, and that money is not enough. We need to find a way where we can create an investment opportunity for those who want to come and help Liberia out. And they're going to only help Liberia out if they believe in the plan that you have, if they believe and share your vision. So that's why I'm excited to be here, and I hope that we are asked some questions about how we can go forward. My experience in Puerto Rico, I think, is pretty helpful, because I saw a system that was totally destroyed that is being rebuilt. I saw a system that was totally destroyed where the legislature had a strong vision about where they wanted to take that utility. I saw a system that was totally destroyed that created a partnership with the customers. I saw a system that was totally destroyed where the universities are helping to implement that vision. I saw a system that was totally destroyed where private capital is beginning to come into Puerto Rico. So I hope we have the opportunity to talk about some of that. And thank you again for this chance to speak with you today.
The big word today is energy transition, and investments are a key enabler of it. So when you come to a place like Liberia, you see a lot of opportunities, and you also hear that money is an issue. Well, let me tell you that in the investment world, money is typically never an issue. There's money sitting, waiting for opportunities. So opportunities is what money are looking for. Then the question is, how can Liberia become an opportunity for foreign investors? And that's where I think David and Lawrence have sort of given already a hint on the direction we need to go. The starting point is the vision that the country wants to have for the next, not year, 2 years, or decade, but for the next 100 years. And from that vision, you walk backward and you figure how you're going to execute it. There has to be a vision and a commitment and a responsibility to execute it. And by doing that, investors would know where to go, where there is an issue, when there is a glitch, to understand how that is going to be sorted. Because what investors want eventually is a return. They want their money back. They need to know who to talk to, who to call when there is an issue. And there's always issues, not just in Liberia, everywhere. There's issues in startups in Silicon Valley. There's issues in startups in Tel Aviv, in Berlin, in Spain, in India, in Singapore. The investors want to know who is responsible, and they want to be reassured. So investing is also about storytelling. And entrepreneurs need to know what they want to achieve. They need to know that they never need to overpromise. In fact, they should always underpromise and overdeliver. So there is an element of being able to become an entrepreneur and raise the standards to international levels, but it is absolutely possible. It's happened in pretty much every countries. It's happening in other countries in Africa. I recently met an entrepreneur from Angola who has got his own startup on robotics. So you can attract funds internationally as long as you are committed to deliver a vision. And this vision doesn't have to be what your neighbors have done. It has to be something that reflects your own identity and your own drives. I understand that there is a huge challenge coming from your recent past. Unfortunately, wars are never fully understood, especially by people who haven't suffered them, how they destroy your willingness to do things, how it unsettles the daily life. But, human beings have been around the planet for tens of thousands of years. They've always gone through war. They've always recovered. So there's a way out, no matter how dark and grim the situation can look. And in this respect, I would like to shift to my second topic and wrap up. I wrote a book about energy citizenship for one simple reason. I called it energy citizenship because originally, actually, it was a diary for my children. And I dedicated the book to my children, but also to 8 billion people worldwide. Why 8 billion people? Because the book explains that energy, and not just electricity, is the foundation of society, right? Society, economic growth, civilization. 1.5 million years ago, when the early human beings learned how to communicate, that's around the time when early human beings learned how to master fire. And so on and so forth, you can draw a line, a parallel between human civilization and the use and the mastery of energy. So learning how to understand and appreciate the value that energy has for society on a daily basis is essential for all the citizenship, all the citizens, all the way up to decision makers and policy makers. Because by appreciating the role that energy plays in restarting a country or in fostering growth, that's where you basically turn things around and you restabilize and you regain your trajectory and you basically build.
Sorry that, sirs, I'm not familiar with your name, sorry, but I got a few concerns. In Liberia, one of the things that Liberians are faced with, particularly from the LEC angle, is that when people pay for their meters, they don't get it on time. Sometimes that can prompt power theft. So I want to ask, do you care to maybe propose some ways that we can mitigate the issue of power theft in Liberia? And another thing is, you think we have a capacity, maybe I'm sure maybe you did some assessment across the country, you've been seeing some waterfalls and all of that. Do you think we need another hydro in the country in order to supply our countries?
Thank you. My name is George Momo, and I report for KSTK Liberia. So my question goes to Dr. Jones. Thank you for the partnership to our energy sector. There is this concern about the low water level at Mount Coffee during the dry season. So as an expert, I want to know what's your expert opinion, or how do you think we can handle that? And you spoke of the Mount Coffee plan. I don't know whether you saw the CLSG line that travels from Taboo through the Polo border to Harper, Maryland, and of course River G. At that point, we have nothing like breaker, just in case there is a problem. we'll have our energy people going there to settle things. But instead, there will be complaints to Ivory Coast. So, as an expert, I mean, how do you think we can handle that? Thank you.
So my name is James Mbala. So out of the guests who answer the questions or the concerns for me, my concern has been drawn to the speaking point that has to do with power thefts and government officials refusing to know that they're supposed to pay for power, instead only the citizens. What are some of the mechanisms you use in other countries to avoid power thefts and making government officials to know that they themselves should pay for power and not only the citizens?
Thank you.
That is not a new problem in Liberia. In fact, that is not a new problem in many parts of the world. Because we have climate change, like the minister said, it's happening around the world. The hotter it gets, we'll have more evaporation and less water in the hydro during the year, especially during the dry season, not during the whole year, but during the dry season. Right now, because of the rainy season in Liberia, we have excess hydro, we have more water, but when the dry season comes. So what some countries do is you either have what is called a diverse set of resources. So besides the hydro, what you will also have, you could have a solar, a utility scale solar. And as I have been informed, the LEC is currently finalizing the process to build a 20 megawatt solar plant next to Ban Coffee. What that will do is that during the dry season, when you have more heat, where you have more sun, you have more solar power, so that will balance out the fluctuation that's happening at the hydro. But there's another resource that Liberia has, and the resource is what is called demand response or consumer response. Because if you walk around Liberia, you go into different buildings, you will see that people actually waste electricity, right? And sometimes you make the air condition much cooler than it should be. So one way to reduce the load on LEC and to reduce the need for power is to control how much you use, to manage so-called demand response. The other comment I will make regarding, and I will have David talk about the issue regarding how to reduce power theft and some of his experiences from around the world. On the issue of the CLSG line and how to deal with the, how you will send crews to help to maintain it, why not use the resources in Liberia? It comes to deal with building capacity. As you know, the LEC, based on my understanding, is now trying to improve its human capacity, but they don't have enough. So for them to send their engineers all the way to the CLSG line crossing border to make those repairs, right now it's probably much more cost effective to keep using the Ivorian skill set until the LEC can build its capacity. And then the last way to address this issue, which I know the LEC might be thinking about, is to use technology. You don't have to always send humans to the site to restore the site after a problem. You can use technology, you can use sensors and other ways to address that issue. David, why don't you talk a little bit about some of your experiences around
Sure.
the mitigation of power theft?
Power theft. So power theft is a big issue. And it was an issue in Puerto Rico and other countries that I've gone to. It's a huge issue. Lawrence said something that really stimulated my thinking with respect to how to deal with power theft. First, in places that I've gone where power theft has been big, there are tremendous fines and penalties, okay, to discourage power theft. But that doesn't always work. So you need sensors, you need monitors, you need to always be able to see the system. Power theft puts lives at risk. When you steal electricity, you're impinging upon the safety of that electric system and the workers who work on that electric system. So substantial outreach and education are critically important. And metering. I said sensors and meters. You have to be able to see what's occurring on your electric system at all times. And you do have to have heavy penalties and heavy fines. There's no simple solution. You have to use all of the above. And I know that I've seen an improvement or decline in power theft in Liberia because there's a team of folks that go and they look throughout the entire system, and they look at areas where there is constant power theft, and they police those areas. And they call people that steal power criminals. So there's a hard way of dealing with it, and there's a soft way of dealing with it. But you need all of the above, in my opinion.
And David, if I may just add regarding the soft way, power theft harms the country.
Yes.
Power theft harms every Liberian. So we who are consumers in a community, when someone is stealing power, it is our responsibility to not just inform our community leaders or the LEC. It is our responsibility to tell those people stealing power that stealing power is wrong, that stealing power is not fair. Now, the question the gentleman also asked was about, he said how to get everyone to pay their fair share. Everybody is a customer of LEC, and that means a customer has to pay the bill. To my understanding, the law doesn't say customer XYZ has a different preference.
Right.
So all the customers, and I think, Mr. Minister, I heard that the Ministry of Lands and Mines is going to start putting meters on all the government buildings to measure the amount of power that is consumed. And if I'm correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that starting next year, they will have prepaid meters on the ministry so that the ministry will know what they are consuming. That's a big step, because as you all know, it all starts from the top. So if the ministry is paying their electricity bill, more people will pay their electricity bill. Take more questions?
Yeah, you can take more questions.
Oh, Mr. Minister.
While I try to answer the one they asked me, but to get the record straight, an impression will not be created here that government entities are using the LEC current, they are not paying for it. That's not true. That's not true. The meter system will be good because it is good for me to know the extent of current I'm using. As it stands, we're just using it, right? But we're not using it free. One of the things that used to happen was each government entity was required to settle their own electricity bill. And then the government said, no, Ministry of Finance would take responsibility. The government would take responsibility through the Ministry of Finance. So it is the Ministry of Finance that is supposed to be making that payment in bulk to the LEC for the services used. But there's a general concern too, if the ministry is paying, but you cannot track the amount of current that is being used by, say, Ministry of Information, Ministry of Lands and Mines, and that's why the prepaid meter system is something that we welcome. The LEC is a government entity. We want to make sure that it survives. We've heard the managing director talk much about the amount that government owes. We don't expect the LEC to be efficient when we owe them that much. So it's a good thing.